Can a DM cheat at D&D? Part 1. Can a DM cheat at D&D? Of course. What matters is how and why. Now, a quick definition of terms. I hold cheating in this context to be a deliberate violation of the established rules or lying about a die roll. So, all of my players know that I have one ironclad rule. You are allowed to try anything you want, but you cannot violate reality. That is, reality in the context of the game. I don't care what you can get the numbers to say, in a realistic game you simply cannot get an F-16 fighter jet to achieve orbit on its own. Frankly, this is how I get around certain types of power gamers. Well, the rules say, Rule 1, buddy, physics say no. Now, if it's a modern magic game and you've got the right voodoo, okay, sure. Any other house rules must be stated at the beginning of the campaign, as well as which sourcebooks are being used, so that everyone is on the same page. Breaking a rule in a book we're not actually using isn't cheating. With that established, as a DM, I am a cheating bastard. My goal as a DM is to serve the story and give the players a good time. Therefore, I will cheat as needed, but only in the players' favor. Never against them, and never just to make their lives easier. I'll give you an example of how I might cheat. It's the final battle with the great evil or whatever, and they've been fighting hard and fighting smart. Ulrich the fighter eats a direct attack from Granddaddy Dragon. Roll to confirm critical. Roll damage, 50. Yikes. Ulrich, what's your AC and HP again? AC 23, HP is down to 13. Bummer, dude. 41 damage. Fuck. Ulrich isn't a grease stain, he's just dying fast. But I know the cleric is 5 feet from him with a shit pot of healing spells and potions on hand. He just needs to get to Ulrich and Ulrich will probably survive. I'm fine letting players die if they choose to do something stupid. It's just that I don't like to let them insta-die due to bad luck. Get fucked up, risk death, possibly still die? Okay. I have a ritual of signing and dating the character sheet of any PC that has died in my game with a red pen. But I like to give them a chance. Dice be damned. I've played games under adversarial DMs, and frankly I usually don't enjoy those games. There is in fact a difference between a DM who challenges you to your limits, and one that is actively trying to kill you. To tell the difference, see how they react when you triumph. If they're excited when you've succeeded despite the odds, that's a challenging DM. If they're upset that you survived, adversarial. So yes, the DM can cheat, but it should be done sparingly, in service to the story, and only in the player's favor. When I was young, about 8 years old, I decided I wanted to DM a game for my family for the first time. My father was very supportive and bought me a kit that had a prefabricated adventure with aids for the DM, nice maps, and so forth. I dutifully read up on the basics of D&D from the kit, a little more basic than the 2nd edition manual, and made sure that I knew everything backwards and forwards. And yes, you can DM at the age of 8 if you're set on it. Come game time, I was a little nervous, but my father, mother, and younger brother were very easygoing about the whole thing. I got a little less nervous and fell into the role of DMing. I forgot the exact circumstances of the session, but it was a pretty simple setup. Dungeon, monsters, traps, big bad guy at the end. Everything was pretty fun for all of us until near the end. The party got wiped out by a single creature, a carrion crawler I think. I was in shock. Up until then I had figured the game was balanced enough not to worry about the party dying. My father picked up on my worry and suggested we use the last of the pre-rolled characters, there were 6 in the kit, and make a new party that would come because the first party failed in their task. I was relieved. Problem solved and it all made sense. Then they started in another fight and once again it was difficult for them and the bad guys were getting great rolls. I was really worried. So I have one of my monsters attack a party member who's nearly dead. I roll behind my screen. 20. No. I don't want to have another total party kill. I knew they couldn't make it with one party member down. 2 total party wipeouts in a single session is just undesirable by either side. Up until this point I was playing strictly by the rules and the rolls I made. I looked at the 20 and then I looked at my brother. He missed. I didn't fudge any more rolls for the rest of the session and everyone completed the adventure. It was fun and they had no idea that I had saved them by not telling them about the real roll I just made. You can only really cheat when you break the rules to achieve a victory condition. But DMs have no real victory conditions. DMs don't win D&D. The players win battles, save towns and so forth, but DMs have no moment of victory. so they really can't cheat by fudging rolls or other changes like that. I know, DMs really win by having a fun session, but that's different. Now, had the monster originally rolled a 1 and I said he hit, and everyone lost the final battle as a result, then that would have been pretty goofed up. But that wouldn't be cheating either, but it would still be awful. In a D&D game, the DM has all the power. Nothing can happen in the game without the DM's approval. This may take an explicit form. For example, the player saying, "I climb the wall, leap to the chandelier and swing to the balcony." The DM says, "Okay, I'll allow it." Or an implicit form. For example, player saying, "I punch the orc in the face," and the DM saying, "He reels back, blood flowing down his chin." In both cases, if the DM wanted, she could deny the action entirely. Players, by contrast, have almost no power. They control their characters, but this control is allowed simply because the DM does nothing to stop it. A DM might run her game in a way that the difference in power is never felt, the players are comfortable with the dynamic, and no one else has the issue with the flow of the game. This doesn't mean the relationship doesn't exist, merely that the participants play their game in a way that avoids addressing the dynamic. Thus, if we ask, can a DM cheat at D&D, the answer appears to be no. Whatever the DM says happens, that's the point of her role in the game. In order to cheat at something, there have to be rules that can be broken. D&D has these rules. Rules in RPGs exist so that the DM's power have some limits. True, the DM still has a lot of authority to make things up, but the rules at least provide a guideline for how the game setting functions. The DM who fails to follow these rules is either disrespecting the game, and therefore the players, or is using the broken rule as an indicator that something weird is taking place in the setting. This works because the rules are also there so players can predict how their actions or how certain events will play out. This lets them develop strategies and plans in order to accomplish their goals. When the DM describes something that's clearly breaking the rules, this triggers a response from players. They perk up and say to themselves, "Hang on, something weird is happening here." Again, this assumes the DM is breaking the rules for a reason and not simply because. In D&D specifically, one of the key elements to the rules is the use of dice. Players and the DM are required to use dice for certain actions or events to account for an element of randomness. In combat, characters roll a d20 for each attack because a fight is a chaotic, adrenaline-filled, rage-inducing event with far too many variables for players to track and maintain a decent flow. Saving throws are another example of where it's appropriate to have dice determine the outcome of a situation, as are ability checks. When a DM ignores the results of a die roll, she's saying to the players, "Fuck the rules, I'm in charge and I get to say what happens." Can a DM cheat at D&D? Yes. Should a DM cheat? That's a different question. P.S. All of this presupposes that the DM has not simply declared or described an event without rolling dice. In that case, there is no cheating possible because, as already established, the DM has the authority and power to decide what happens in the game. Cheating only happens if the DM rolls the dice and then chooses to ignore the results. Philosophically, the Dungeon Master is the one who defines the game. By definition, it's difficult to argue that anything they do is really cheating, since they set and control the rules, content, and eventual course of any given session. If they're the god of the table, what they say and do goes, period. Often their role involves compensating for a certain margin of error in the content creation by improvising during the session. That can mean adding a monster here or there where there might not have been one, extending a monster's HP when it doesn't feel like the fight's challenging enough, fudging secret rolls and so on, variously taking advantage of opportunities previously unrecognized or else compromising some of the numbers to try and make the session more fun for the players. I'd argue that indulging in DM fiat to try and engage more isn't a bad thing. Now that said, when you run a game, there is a kind of agreement between you and the players, even when you don't necessarily form that agreement aloud. After all, if they don't agree to play your game, then you don't have one. There's rules to the relationship that will vary from DM to DM and from group to group. I would argue that if you violate those rules in a way that harms the player's trust, then you've definitely cheated. It's ultimately up to you and your players to define what cheating is, and you'll know better than we do, but it can't hurt to discuss where everybody at the table would draw the line in the open. Myself? If I've got to fudge a lot, then that breaks my trust in the gaming system that I'm using more than anything. If whatever measure of difficulty I'm given to gauge an encounter against the players isn't accurate, that frustrates me immensely. At some point, it becomes a problem of the game rules and their reliability, and then I start re-examining whether I should be using a different game. Cheat depends on context. It is an abuse of trust. When I cheat in Monopoly, I give myself an advantage by abusing the trust of the other players. When we sit down to play Monopoly, we agree that we will play fair and let skill and luck decide who wins. We can call that the social contract. In tabletop role-playing, the social contract is different, though. It is for the GM to create, run, and moderate a fantasy world for the entertainment of the group, and for the players to run along and build on that fantasy world for the same purpose. The rules themselves are not important for that purpose. They are just the means to fulfill the social contract, but not the only means. Adjudicating and even breaking the rules is part of the social contract, so it's not cheating. So cheating means breaking the social contract and the trust between the GM and the players in some other means. It could be something where the GM abuses their power to their own advantage. One of the most horrible abuses that I have witnessed was when the GM pressured a girl in the group for sex in exchange for the permission to play a drow. She called him out and the group collapsed. Nobody wanted to play with him anymore.